one other paratroop drop in the Second World War, and then he was in the last major battle of the Korean War, which is Pork Chop Hill. And then here we were going into the first major battle of the Vietnam War, and I was looking into his eyes as we were going in, and he knew what was ahead. He was just sunken down like that and looking into my eyes. Again, I was close to him because I was with and serving with Hal Moore and Sergeant Major Plumley. Musketeer. 118 pounds, carrying 60. Flak jacket, M16. We were the first ones to have it. We were the first cavalry division air mobile. We were air assault tactics. We were the first to have all the helicopters. We were fighting a new way of warfare, anti-guerrilla warfare, fight in the jungles. Couldn't drive there, hard to walk there, so we flew in. And we brought in things with us. We brought in helicopter, bringing in artillery support, close-in support with air support. And all of this stuff worked. We proved it in the first major battle of the Vietnam War, as shown in the movie We Were Soldiers Once and Young. Flak jacket, glasses that you saw, the helmet that you saw, radio in the back, PRC-25, the handset, there's 300 rounds of ammunition, you carried a couple of meals, so it's like 60 pounds that you're carrying. And I was following Colonel Moore, again, I'm hitting you in the eyes, sorry about that. And my friend said, Ron, I've got your Brownie camera, your Kodak camera, stop a minute, I'll take your picture. I can't stop. I said, if I stop, I'm going to fall backwards. It's so heavy, right? So we'll lean forward. So this is a picture of me leaning forward as I can for equilibrium, so I don't fall back, right? And in the ballroom, I ended up being taught how to ballroom dance next by Mouseketeer Bobby, one of the original Mouseketeers. And so I ended up in twirling around. You know, sometimes that helped too. When I came across a bump in the road or a tree truck or something like that, keeping up with Colonel Moore, I would twirl around and find myself about 3 feet in front of him. I'd be looking back at the Colonel and say, "Oh, hi, sir. Thank you very much for the gentleman." My nickname in Vietnam was Twinkle Toes. Okay, right here. This is that valley of death that you saw. This is it. I took this picture. This is I ran up to it, stopped to take this picture. That's my shadow. And this is an AP correspondent or photographer that took a picture from the front that's in the book. We are escorting our first 2 North Vietnamese Communist Army regular POWs to another helicopter. They've just been taken off. And in the movie, you see them going on to the helicopter. Well, we took them off. And if you look real close, right there is a wounded knee. Casualty. Okay, this is in the Valley of Death. And see how high the grass is. It's called elephant grass. I ended up in my last operation walking off a helicopter and going into high grass like that and walked straight into a pointed spear, a punji stick, straight into my leg. And it was interesting because I was falling off to the right, and the guy in front of me had just fallen off to his left, and I couldn't understand why he was falling off to his left, and that darn thing had gone in through the side of his leg and threw him that way, carrying all of our gear, and all of my gear I was carrying too. We were going down a slope, a hill, and the guy falls down this way, and that stick stands straight up in the air where I can't see. It's high grass, and I walk straight into the same thing, and I go off that way. So it became the biggest joke of the 1st Cavalry Division. 2 men fell by the same punji stick. My goodness gracious me. It was the 1st Cav first, but I came home with a Purple Heart. Came home with a Purple Heart. Can you pass this around? Okay, next. This is the picture you're talking about that you saw. Kind of hard to see. Glasses. Sergeant Major, this PFC Poley saved the day during our fighting, manning an M60 machine gun, became a large farmer in Pennsylvania, and he deserves everything he got. That's good. Thank you. Where were you stationed in number 3? Let's see, how long was I there? I was there almost, the entire tour was 9 months. I was actually in country around 8 months. We went over by ship through the Panama Canal from Charleston, South Carolina, if you're going through the Panama Canal, there's places where it comes up close, the jungles, vegetation, and it comes right up to the side of the ship. So as I'm looking out there, being from Southern California, I'm looking out there and say, wait a minute, hey, Mother Nature did a pretty good job of copying Walt Disney's Jungle Boat Cruise at Disneyland. You have to see it up close and personal. See? You see it at Disneyland and you see it's really out there. Number 3, where were you stationed and where were most of your enemy engagements, if any? Central Highlands of Vietnam. I don't think I need the map, it's not necessary.
It's up to you. I can show you real quick.
Okay, good. In the southeastern portion of Asia, it's called Southeast Asia, Indochina. This space is like this towards the west coast of the United States. This is the country of Vietnam as it was during the Vietnam War. At the middle of the country, it was free, that's where we were, supporting the free and the communists at the north. And where we were stationed was in the center part of the southern half of the country, South Vietnam. Landed at Quy Nhon, and we were based at An Khê. The battle that you just saw was right here, right next to the Cambodian border. Here's another country, Cambodia. North Vietnamese communists were coming down in droves by thousands through other countries, Laos and Cambodia, trying to cut Vietnam in half in 1965, and then make a run for the city, the capital city of Vietnam, Saigon, and take it over. In other words, communizing the South, taking away their freedom. And we stopped them from doing that in that battle that you just heard. Battle of the Ia Drang Valley. Okay, where's the question? Oh, my question here. Thank you. That age, you know. Thank you. What was the worst thing about Vietnam? Distance from loved ones. My spirituality gave me comfort. My letters from my family, my sister and my dad, gave me warmth and closeness with the family. Letters from my first love gave me strength. Seriously. It's like a football game, but this is team football. And you don't know if you're going to survive the next day. That letter from someone that's very dear to your heart made all the difference in the world. What was the worst thing about Vietnam? Let's see. What was the best thing about it? What question I just answered?
The worst.
Okay.
You said distance from
I
your
kind
loved
of
ones.
mixed it up for you there, okay?
That's all right.
The heat, about the worst about Vietnam, it would rain without any clouds. Very humid. There were snakes there that were called 5-steppers and 8-steppers. If you were bit by a 5-stepper, you last 5 steps and just drop dead. 8-stepper, 8 steps. You were flooded with families of scorpions in the ground all over the place. Guys would wake up in the morning with a family of scorpions and their little babies on their stomachs. Get them off. Take bayonet like that. Millipedes were as wide and as long as Alaskan king, the biggest king crab legs that you've ever seen, same colors. You know, I mean, these are things you don't normally see. Anyway, enough about the worst things. But again, the worst thing I saw helped define me for the rest of my life, which was handling our dead and wounded. And it prepared me to do other things similarly to help others later on in life. And it taught me to be prepared, being open and teachable, to sacrifice on behalf of others. And that has gave me complete happiness for the rest of my life. All these things were defined in that valley of death. What was the best thing? Being a part of history. And I mean that. I was in Custer's regiment, 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, had been decimated at the Battle of the Little Bighorn in the far western United States in the 1800s. And here we were in the same battalion with the same kind of leader as General Custer. Only this time we had air mobility. We had the helicopter. In an impossible situation, we made it work. And it was history right before my very eyes. History is alive. I noticed in the back you have a picture of JFK. I appreciate that very much. After I graduated from high school, I went to work during the summer at a department store in downtown LA. It was 2 blocks from the Biltmore Hotel, which was then the headquarters for the Democratic Party convention that was held in Los Angeles that week. And I went over there at lunchtime and after I was finished with work at 3 o'clock. Well, on the night after, the morning after, the afternoon after JFK had received his party's nomination in Los Angeles, I walked over there just to see what was happening at 3 o'clock. And there was nothing in front of the Biltmore Hotel, but in back there were 2 convertibles, 2 Chevy convertibles there. No one was in them. I said, well, that's interesting. What's this? And I look over at the corner, they've got a CBS camera over there. I said, well, let's stick around. And I did. And no sooner had I decided to stay for a while, Lyndon Baines Johnson, JFK's vice presidential nominee, and the family came out and sat down in the first convertible. I said, well, gee, I wonder who's going to follow him. Because they were going to go down to they were going to be taken down to the turnstile end of the Coliseum to give the presidential nominee's acceptance speech to the convention outside of the Coliseum. So they had to be driven down there. So that's what that was all about. And time goes on, nothing happens, and so, well, I've got to get back down to where my ride is, my uncle, otherwise he's going to want to try to leave without me coming back to Garden Grove. And so I start walking away, and I get halfway down the block at Biltmore, and a town car turns right around this way, Continental. I said, oh my goodness, I wonder. And it comes and it stops right where I'm at. I'm slightly off the street, and he stops right there. And he gets out, it's JFK. And he's tall, dark, and handsome, and he's got thin thighs. Hi, hello there. And we walk together over to the cars, and he gets into the back convertible and stands on the floor. And by then, about 8 people encircle the limousine. The convertible. And so he starts shaking hands with everyone. So I get in line and says, "Thank you very much for being here." And I say, "Best of luck to you in November, Senator." Shook hands with him. And he says, "Thank you very much for being here." Thank you very much. And so he goes on to the next one. And I didn't wash this hand for 3 days. Had to after 3 days. You can tell. Followed. But again, it's a piece of history. And it's something that I was very, very, very much interested in. And it was alive. And 2 years later, almost to the month, when I was in Vietnam before that battle, Ted Kennedy, young Senator Ted Kennedy came out. He was on a trip from Congress to see what the Vietnam War was all about and the refugee situation that happened from our operations. And I was blessed to meet him, shake hands with him. So, history's alive, and it was just wonderful, all because of the United States military. And because it was my interest. I was being open and teachable, starting from the get-go. So I have to say that was probably the best thing that happened about Vietnam for me. Question 6, how did you feel about Vietnam before the war? Open and ready to experience. Open and ready to experience. How did you feel about Vietnam when you were there? Got to be there. There's people trying to take away the freedom of others, and we're stopping them. In other words, we were fighting the bullet. That was supported by the communist Soviet Union that were trying to communize the entire world. In other words, your freedom and mine. How did you feel about Vietnam? Number 8, how did you feel about Vietnam after you returned home? I couldn't be open anymore. Because the press had already sold the people with the idea that what Hanoi Radio, which was the voice of our enemy, was telling the world about we being baby killers and all the bad things that we were doing, when actually it was they that were doing it, the enemy we were fighting. When we returned, we were not really welcomed home. By our loved ones, yes. But when we wanted to talk about what we saw there, it was closed. They were saying, no, we already know about the Vietnam War. We've seen it on TV. It's that simple. The answer is, for your life, be open and teachable, critically think, beware of what people tell you, make sure in news and discussions and things like that of where they may be coming from, and you use your noodle. Your teacher is teaching you through history to be critically aware, so critically think. Just don't take things as gospel when people say things on TV. And I know it's even harder for you now than me then, because all we had was, at the time, black and white TVs. Some people were getting colored. Now you've got the widescreen, you've got the, my God, I love it. It's just terrific. But when someone comes on television, it's also as beautiful as these beautiful motion pictures. It's pretty easy to be suckered in. When someone says something on TV, use your noodle, be clear.